is Dr. Sylvia Peregrino, and I'm the host of Entre Nosotras, Latina Voices here on EPCC TV. I'm also an associate professor of government. And today I have the pleasure of having Ms. Iliana Holguin, who is Commissioner of Precinct 3. She just got elected in November and just took office this year in January 2021. Welcome, Commissioner Holguin.
Thank you so much for the invitation to be here with you.
For the students and the audience, could you tell us a little bit about your background?
So I was born and raised here in El Paso. I've actually lived pretty much in every single part of the city. My family moved around a lot when I was younger. So I've lived everywhere throughout the county. After I graduated from high school, I obtained a scholarship to go to UT Austin. So I obtained my bachelor's degree in government from UT. I decided to stay in Austin for law school. So I attended the University of Texas School of Law. I graduated in 2000, which is the same year that I became licensed to become an attorney. I stayed in Austin for a few more years after that until about 2004, when I decided to come back home. And I've lived in the Mission Valley ever since. So my precinct, Precinct 3, represents all of the Mission Valley, all the way heading east through through Isleta, Socorro, Sanelli, Fabens, Clint, and Tornillo. And then north of the freeway, everything east of Highway 375, including the East Lake area, the Pebble Hills area east of 375 and south of Zaragoza, and then the Montana Vista and Red Sands area.
Great.
And Horizon. I almost forgot Horizon.
And Horizon.
Horizon.
Right. and Horizon is growing. I know.
Growing so fast. Yes, that part of the county, that east side part of the county, is the fastest growing area of the county. And that's why right now, we're, as a commissioner's court, we're spending so much on infrastructure, because we know that the county is just going to keep growing out in that part of the county.
So you bring up a good topic for those members of the audience that might not know. What exactly is the function of county government? What does county government do?
Basically, what happens is you have, within El Paso County, we have several municipalities. Of course, the city of El Paso is the biggest and makes up the largest share of the population of the county. But then you also have smaller municipalities. So you have Socorro, the city of Socorro, you have Sanelli, so you have Horizon, other incorporated areas. And so if an area is incorporated, like Horizon City or the city of El Paso or Socorro, then the city government is in charge of providing services to residents within their boundaries. So county government, like the county commissioner's court where I sit, we're then responsible for making sure that we're providing services to everyone who is not receiving those services from a municipality. So we take care of the folks that are living outside of a municipality, that are living in the county of El Paso. Of course, I also represent the individuals that live within the various city limits. So for example, a big part of my area is in the Bel Air area and the area by Isleta High School. Those are within the city of El Paso, and my precinct still covers them. But for example, if there's an issue with a street, if there's a big pothole in that street, then that's not something that county government could go in and fix. What I would do is then work with the city representative in that area to make sure that the city is able to go and fix that pothole for the residents. Whereas if we're talking about like Tornillo, for example, that is not incorporated and is not within the city of El Paso or any other incorporated municipality, if there's a big pothole in the middle of a street in Tornillo, then that's when the county is responsible for those roads because they're outside of the city limits. They're not within a municipality. So the county basically takes a lot of the responsibility for the areas that are not located within a municipality jurisdiction.
Thinking of the fact that you just took office, what are your top 3 things that you want to accomplish while you're in office?
Well, right now, the biggest priority, of course, has to do with defeating COVID. It's funny, when I first started running for office, it was September of 2019, so a year and a half ago. And my priorities back then seem different than what our priorities are now, because of course back then we had no idea what we were going to be facing with COVID. And I still have those same priorities. The only difference is that now COVID is our focus. And defeating COVID is our focus. So just in general, speaking about my priorities for the district, for me, one of the most important issues was always public safety is, the Sheriff's Department. So the Sheriff's Department is under county government. The Commissioner's Court approves the budget for the Sheriff's Department, and the Sheriff's Department, they're entrusted with the public safety out in the county outside of the various municipalities like we talked about. So if you're within the city of El Paso, the City of El Paso Police Department is in charge of investigating those crimes and taking care of public safety within the city. The same thing with the city of Socorro, Saneli, Horizon. But when you're talking about an area that is not in an incorporated municipality, then that's the sheriff's office's jurisdiction. So public safety has always been a big issue for me, and working closely with the sheriff's office to make sure that our communities out in the county are safe. So that was always a big priority of mine. Another priority of mine was just wanting to make sure that people that live out in the county, especially in the further away areas, the more outlying areas of the county, that they really felt that their county government was working for them. When I started campaigning in September of 2019, I made a promise that I was going to visit every single neighborhood in the precinct, and I am happy to say that I did. And I was even able to visit some neighborhoods twice. Actually, by the end of the campaign, I probably made it to most neighborhoods 3 times to try to speak with as many folks as possible. And one of the things that I kept hearing, especially from the more outlying areas like Tornillo and Fabens and San Miguel and Socorro and Horizon, especially a lot of the colonias that we have out in that part of the county, Montana Vista, the residents didn't feel a connection to county government. They didn't really feel that county government was there to help them. And to me, that's very wrong. I mean, that's exactly what county government is supposed to be for, is to help the residents. So that was also really important to me, was to make sure that I reestablished that connection with the communities. And it's hard right now because, with COVID, we're not able to go out into the communities as much as we would like to, but I still make every effort to visit the different areas within the precinct. So for example, this morning, I was actually out in Montana Vista visiting a COVID testing site. And, we had it up on Facebook. I invited the media, because I want to make sure that people know that these services are available to them. And the reason we had this testing site in Montana Vista is because we recognize that it is sometimes difficult for folks who live in the more outlying areas to be able to come into El Paso to receive very critical services like COVID testing and of course the vaccine. And so I wanted to make sure that people in Montana Vista knew that this was going to be a service available to them today. So, I went out there, I invited some media to go with me, again, just to try to make sure to spread the word and make sure that people know that these services are there and available and accessible to them. Tomorrow, I'm going to spend most of the day in Socorro and in Horizon. We have recently, the county approved providing some funds for grants and also low interest loans to businesses who are suffering because of COVID. And 60% of those funds that we set aside for businesses are supposed to be used for businesses located outside of the city of El Paso. Again, with the recognition that it's a lot of times harder for businesses out in the county to access services. So 60% of the funds are supposed to be spent and allocated to those businesses. But if businesses don't know about the program or don't know about the funds, they're not going to apply. So what I've been doing the past couple of weekends, and we'll do this weekend as well, is actually going myself and just walking into businesses. We have posters, really nice posters that were developed by the Better Business Bureau. So I go into a business and I, talk to the folks that are there. I ask them if they know about the program, that there may be help for them if they're struggling. I ask them if I can put a poster up. So last weekend I was in Fabens and Sanelli. Tomorrow I plan on being in Socorro and in Horizon. So even though I am limited by COVID, I can't really have community meetings or things like that because, of course, we still have to abide with, with social distancing. I'm still going out into the community to try to make sure that they know what, programs are available through the county. And it's incredible that a lot of times people don't have that information. And I feel like that's a big part of my job, is to make sure that people know that we're here and that we're here to help them. So like I said, the biggest priority right now, of course, is dealing with COVID. And that's a big part of what we're dealing with right now, not just at the county, but really at the municipal levels as well.
And speaking of COVID, I know that before your time, there were fights with the former mayor and with Judge Samaniego, our county judge. Have you seen the relationship improve, or how's that going? And I know you've only been in office a couple of weeks, but if you could speak to that.
It was very unfortunate that there were very public disagreements between the former mayor, Mayor Margot, and our county judge, Ricardo Samaniego. And I know it was incredibly frustrating for the county judge because he didn't feel that there was very much cooperation coming from the mayor. And in the end, in November, it just kind of exploded and things got really bad. So I can't speak for the county judge, but my impression is that he has a much better working relationship with the new mayor, Mayor Leeser, who is much more accessible and transparent and really seems to be much more willing to work cooperatively with not only the county government, but with all of the governmental entities within our county. So I think that the relationship now is much better. Again, I can't really speak for the county judge, but that's been my impression.
Do you have meetings that you meet with the city officials, or like is there a big room where people are planning how to deal with COVID? Because I think a lot of people have been frustrated with the vaccine. I know I tried to register in December, and then I also found out that the city's doing one thing, and then I guess UMC is doing its own thing. And so I think a lot of people are frustrated. And then the fact that it's online, what if, I have elderly in-laws, and luckily their daughter's tech savvy, so she registered them, and they were able to get the vaccine. But what if, what if your children live out of town, or you don't speak English? How are we dealing with that?
No, these are very, very big challenges that we're having right now as a community. So to answer your first question, there is a COVID-19 task force, and the county commissioner who's actually assigned to that task force is Commissioner David Stout. So he's the one that regularly meets with the task force. Now, he comes back to Commissioner's Court and gives us updates, but we also hear directly from the county health, the city health authority, Dr. Ocaranza. So he gives us a report at our Commissioner's Court meetings every month. And Chief Rodriguez also gives us a report. So we get a report from them, and that's where we're able to ask questions. And it's done during a public meeting so that the community can also hear the questions and get the latest figures and the latest information that we have. And one of the things, the issues that always comes up is exactly what you were alluding to. We know that the community is extremely frustrated with the vaccination process. Now, one really good thing is that El Paso is actually doing the best in all of Texas as far as vaccinating our population. So we actually have vaccinated, relatively speaking, more people than anywhere else in Texas, which is great. I think the last number I heard as of this morning was 10% of our population has already received the first vaccine. And that's better than anywhere else in the state, which is great. But still, we have a long way to go. And we certainly have challenges, one of which is what you identified, that there seems to be different ways of registering. And then a lot of it is online. And so you do have issues with folks who are not tech savvy, who don't have access to internet, and maybe don't have transportation. Even if they did and could register, maybe don't have transportation to get them, from out in the county to be able to come in and get registered. And so those are issues that we've been trying to address. So the route, well, just to make sure to explain a little bit, only certain providers receive the vaccine. So the largest provider here in El Paso is the health department. So they get the largest number of vaccines. And they're primarily under the city. UMC also gets its own shipments of vaccines regularly every week. And that's why you see two main different ways of registering, because you have the health department, they receive their allocation and they have their method of registering folks and getting folks in to take the vaccine. And then you have UMC, and they have their own method of registering and bringing in folks. And then you have a lot of other smaller providers that have their own way of registering. So one of the things that we actually brought up at this last meeting is to see if there was a way that all of the providers that have allocations of vaccines can use one list, so that you don't have folks having to try calling, 10 different phone numbers. Because unfortunately, for example, UMC doesn't get very many vaccines. They'll get a shipment of 5,000, and then their registration will be full after a couple of hours, sometimes not even
minutes.
Minutes, yeah.
Minutes, 10 minutes.
But that's because that's all that they have. And whereas you have folks who signed up on the EP Strong, website and have been waiting and are on a huge wait list. So we're trying to find out if there's a way where all of the providers who have vaccines can work off of one list to hopefully make the process a little bit less complicated and less frustrating. Now there's also the issue of everything, the registration is online. And yeah, if you have access to internet and you can get in and you can register, it's great, it works perfectly. But the problem is that if you don't have internet, you don't have a smartphone, you don't have that access to technology. So UMC, for example, they do have a particular number where people can call who can't register online, where they will be registered. And then the smaller providers also have phone numbers where you can call and register by phone. But it is very frustrating. I know here in our office, we've gotten several calls from constituents who want to register but don't have access to internet, don't know how to do it. And so we've registered them here from my office, but obviously that's not the solution, right? The solution is finding a better way for people to be able to register by having a dedicated phone number, something that people can still use even if they don't have the access to technology.
The fact that you represent some of the unincorporated areas that might have less resources, less, because from my understanding, some of those vaccines have to be kept at very low temperatures. And so if there's not a hospital in, let's say, Fabens, in Sanelli, Horizon, I know that they do have one, right? But, what's the county doing, or how are you guys strategizing to make those vaccines available, or just being able to get it to those communities?
So I'm really excited actually about this. I'm really glad that you asked about this. So the county is partnering up, or has partnered up with UMC and provided $400,000 in CARES Act funding for the purchase of a mobile medical unit. And the whole goal of the mobile medical unit is to be able to travel out into the outlying parts of the county to provide services to those residents who may not be able to travel into El Paso. And the first, obviously, the immediate focus is going to be on the vaccine, but that's not the only thing that we'll be able to use the medical unit for. We can use it for other types of vaccinations. We can use it for lab work. We can use it for exams. So we actually unveiled the mobile medical unit on January 12th. So we had a little ribbon cutting, a little unveiling. Some of the local news stations were able to go in. I mean, it's a fully functioning, like a little mini mobile doctor's office. And we're going to use that right away to start making sure that we're distributing vaccines to the outlying parts of the county where people may have transportation issues to come in and get their vaccine. So I'm really excited about that. So it was unveiled on the 12th. I double checked yesterday, as a matter of fact, and UMC confirmed that they finished the certification process and the registration process for the unit. And right now they're in the middle of staffing it. So once the unit is fully staffed, it'll be able to start making these trips out into the community. And I've let them know that my office wants to be very much involved with making sure that the folks in whatever community it is that they're going to are aware that the medical mobile unit is going to be out there. So they're going to keep me abreast of the scheduling so that I can try to help get the word out. We'll rely, of course, on social media, but also on our local media partners to try to reach the folks that may not have access to social media, just to make sure that people know when the medical unit is going to be in their community. So I'm really, really excited about that. And I hope that we can start getting the unit out into the communities very, very soon.
Oh, well, that's wonderful news. I hadn't heard about that. And so the vaccine is free. If do they get charged for having someone give it to them?
Oh,
No?
no. Mm-mm, mm-mm. No,
So
no.
it'll be complimentary or part of UMC.
Yes, yes.
That's wonderful. And so, you know, we've talked a lot about COVID, and that's become the priority. Did the count? I know the city got some CARES funding for COVID, and then they spent it on some buildings that they don't use. Did the county get some CARES money, and if you know how that's been spent?
We did get CARES money. And actually every single week at our county commissioners court meeting, we get an update on how our CARES money has been spent. And so this past Monday, we received our update, and I have it here in front of me, but the things that we've been spending money on, well, probably one of the biggest expenditures that we've had is that what the county decided to do was to allocate some of our COVID funds to then be able to turn those over to the smaller municipalities. So the city of El Paso got its own COVID funds that they've been spending, but there's a lot of smaller municipalities within the county who didn't have access and who weren't able to get some of that COVID money. So the county is passing that COVID money on to them. So it's almost about $4 million that we've passed along to the smaller municipalities, and that's one of the biggest COVID expenses. But we've spent money on like our elections department. Of course, we had the November general election. November was one of the worst months for COVID, and we had to have a general election. The July runoff as well. So we had money set aside for our elections department to have to deal with those challenges. We have money that we've been giving to the food bank. We've seen food insecurity become an even bigger issue than it previously was here in our community because of COVID. So we have funds that we've allocated for the food bank. We have funds that we've allocated to help some of the homeless shelters, financial assistance to help people who need help, maybe paying their mortgage, paying their bills, funeral assistance. This was an item that was just recently on the agenda again this week's meeting, where we talked about continuing to help families who need help with paying for their loved ones' burial expenses. So we have a program where we can give families up to $2,000 to help with those burial expenses. Of course, another big area where we've spent a lot of money, over $7 million, is in PPE and sanitation equipment and medical equipment. So that's a big issue. That's a big area. And then, of course, operating expenses. We spend a lot of funds. We've had our costs of operating our morgue, sadly, have shot through the roof. We had to have temporary morgue trailers brought in at the height when we were seeing a lot of deaths from COVID. We've had to expand our morgue. Very recently, we had to put in a new, or we decided that we should put in a new filtration system and to update the filtration system that we had. So we've invested a lot in our morgue. And then, of course, we've been spending money on salaries. For example, additional COVID pay for some of our employees who are dealing directly with the impact of COVID. Everything from, at the sheriff's department to, our janitorial crew who now has to do things very differently than they had to before COVID. So those are the types of things that we've been spending our money on.
No, that's a good update. And if I know that just sometimes students mention to me that they've had family members that die. How would they find out about that assistance?
So the funeral homes are supposed to provide that information because the assistance that we provide is paid directly to the funeral homes. So the funeral homes are supposed to talk to families. There is an income requirement. We're trying to help families who do need that financial assistance because of their low income status. And so the funeral homes, once they identify someone who they believe qualifies for the funds, they're actually the ones that help with collecting all of the paperwork. And then the county basically reimburses the funeral home for up to $2,000 worth of expenses.
And you're working with all funeral homes, or it's just a couple that are?
No, as far as I know, it is all funeral homes. All funeral homes have access to the program.
And I do remember last year seeing in the news the fact that we even made the New York Times with the fact that we had inmates from the county transporting bodies, and I think they were making like below minimum wage. Is that something that was more of a sheriff's decision, or was that a county decision? And I know that's before you were an elected official, but in case if you know.
This was in November when we were just at the worst place that we've ever been as a community with regards to COVID. And there were just so many deaths. And I think it was just a matter, it was just one of those things that had to be done in the moment to try to deal with all of the deaths that we were seeing. So I don't think I wasn't on the commissioner's court at that time, but I don't think it was necessarily something that no one ever thought was going to need to happen. It just kind of had to happen. But luckily, we were able to get the National Guard to come in and help. And so that, with the inmates, I think it only lasted a couple of weeks, and then the National Guard came in. And the National Guard has been such a huge blessing. They really helped tremendously, not only in that particular area, but I was at the food bank the other day, and we had, oh my goodness, at least 30 or 40 National Guard folks there helping with distributing the food and packing it up into boxes. I mean, they were so great. Just this morning, the COVID testing that was going on in Montana Vista, it was 3 young men who were in the National Guard. So the National Guard has really, I think, made such a huge difference in so many areas. So I'm really glad that we were able to get their help.
And I myself, I stay home because I have pre-existing medical conditions, and I'm lucky that my job at EPCC allows me to work from home. But when I drive somewhere, to maybe pick up groceries, it doesn't seem like there's a pandemic. Like all the restaurants are open. And I guess just to contrast, like in New Mexico, the dining rooms are still closed. And so, I feel like they're taking it more seriously than we are. What would you say to those people that think that or do we still have a lot of these extra trailers? Like, are we still, in the hot zone?
We are still in the middle of a pandemic, and we can't let ourselves forget that. Right now, there's so much focus on the vaccine, but which is incredibly important, of course. We want to get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible. But at the same time, we can't let ourselves forget about all of the other things that we need to keep doing. So the things that we've been doing since March of last year, we need to keep hand washing. We need to keep social distancing. We need to keep wearing our masks, and we need to be testing. That was one of the reasons that I wanted to go out to the testing facility in Montana Vista this morning, is to just kind of remind people and bring attention to it again. We need to keep testing. So yes, our focus is on getting as many of our community members vaccinated as quickly as possible, but we can't forget about everything else. And we need to continue to be careful, because we are very much still in the middle of a pandemic, and we can't let ourselves get complacent. And yes, it seems like things are starting to get a little bit better, but by no means are we through this health crisis. We're not there yet. We still have a long way to go, and we have to continue to be careful. Work from home if you can, and if you can't, take all of the precautions, as many precautions as you can. But keep doing what we've been doing. We've been doing it for almost a year. We need to keep doing it. Keep hand washing, keep mask wearing, social distancing, and testing.
Thank you, Representative Holguin. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us, and we appreciate the information. Thank you.
Yes, of course, my pleasure.